Thanks so much for joining me. I really
So
appreciate it.
you're not actually on the balcony of your hotel with the Temple of Zeus
How
behind you.
come nobody falls for it? Nobody falls for it. I don't know. I think I need to
Yeah.
get high quality resolution images or something. But anyway,
Yeah. How's it going?
good, really good. Yeah. Where are you at the
Thanks.
moment?
I'm in LA. I'm at my
LA,
house in LA.
LA.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So I've
Yeah.
been
What's the
traveling
weather
around with the
like
kids.
there? I can see you in a t-shirt.
It's warm. It's always warm.
Is
It's
it?
a
Oh, yeah,
good,
it's always
yeah.
warm. Yeah, yeah. I see. I see.
Um, but it's been good. But thank you for having me on today. This is great.
No, awesome. Thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure. Where are you?
I'm in Adelaide, South Australia. I don't know if you've heard of that place before.
I haven't, but I have actually haven't been to Australia yet, but I wanted to work with a lot of Australian talent, but haven't had the pleasure of going there yet. Big Greek
Yeah.
community though.
There is a big
So
Greek community, just like in the US, not as big, but we've got a decent Greek community, and some of them are starting to, get involved in the film industry, and it's good to see. So that's kind of part of the reason I started this podcast, just to kind of shine a light on some of the talent that's going on around the world with, Greek ancestry and stuff like that. And it turns out there's a lot more than I expected, to be honest. I'm pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
were you born in Australia?
I was born in Australia, and from a very young age, probably, I don't know, 6 months old, I was taken to Greece in Athens, and I was raised there until I was about seven. And then we came
Hmm.
back to Australia, and then it's been a bit of back and forth, but generally I'd say Australia is where I've been
Okay.
raised. Yeah.
And is your
Yourself?
family? No, I mean I'm third generation
Right.
Greek American. So I grew up on the East Coast and was which, as I learned, my parents, it was the pendulums swing both ways. So my parents wanted to Americanize us and assimilate us into the rest of the group. They felt very other and outsider feeling, and that wasn't as embraced by my parents. So they were like, we're not going to teach our kids Greek, we're going to but and then they tried later after regretting their decision to try to send me to Greek school and do that. And I did come to identify with my Greek heritage through going to Greece and meeting other people my age. Usually, and they're always tied to somehow the Greek Church.
Mm, mm.
Unfortunately, they don't separate these kind of programs from being under the umbrella of the Greek Church. Um, and going there and then finding and falling in love with the country. But interestingly, being Greek American has always been a wedge to Greeks in Greece. And
Mm.
until my profile of my work increased and that seemed to be more disarming, I found that because I was of Greek descent, but my parents or my family had left Greece to come to America, that was very viewed down upon as like turning their back on the country. So,
Oh, right.
um, so I,
Interesting.
re-embraced my culture. I got my passport. I became Greek citizen. I really want to bring and shoot work there,
Mm.
and working on that for my kids right now, and just to kind of reclaim their heritage. My daughter's Greek and Persian, but my boys are fourth generation full Greek, American, and that's kind of exciting.
Are they embracing the Greek side
They
of
are. They
now?
really do. They really do. Interestingly, like in a lot of ways, I felt more Greek in Italy when I was working there because I was of Mediterranean descent, and not necessarily speaking Greek wasn't an issue because I could speak Italian well enough when I worked there. So it was, but I was embraced much more as being like one of them because I was of Greek descent, and
Right.
that's but it's a big part of my family's life, and it was something that was culturally really raised around us more than I'd say the religion was.
Interesting. Yeah. Having spoken to some Greeks who live in America, raised there, born there, it sounds like the church is intertwined in culture, the dancing festivals, the sports events, all that sort of stuff. It seems the community
100%.
is centered around. In Australia, it is like that, but not quite as much from what I understand. Even Greek
Mm.
schools and things like that, right?
Yeah, like I broke off from the church when I was about 40, and I am the things we do for our kids, but I find it challenging to reintegrate them into the Greek community because I myself don't necessarily want to be with the church Greeks again because it takes me back to when I was part of it, and it was something that I made a decision to separate from, and for my own like journey. And so it's true, but I also respect my boy's mother who wants to do that. I respect my son wanting to play basketball,
Right.
and the church league being one of the ways he can stay playing. So it doesn't bother me, but it took me a while to readjust, and everybody was happy to see me again. But I just don't necessarily like the enmeshed culture and religion having to be so intertwined. I think there's beautiful things of each that should be celebrated separately.
Certainly, the Greek culture it's a two-edged sword, isn't it? It's a beautiful thing, and it's something we also have to manage in our lives. I've personally found it challenging in many ways. There's certain expectations, certain pressures, but it's also very loving and supporting in many other ways. It's an interesting culture.
I agree. There is so many. Like, I think one of the great things is that there is a big, passionate community. Both, I have consistently in my work come back to the themes of that I pull from my big Greek family. That's like crazy and intense, and who's talking to who, and who's not talking to who, and who's mad at who, and who didn't get what, and like it's so intense that like I've been able to draw on a career of themes from my family experience,
Right.
in my
Yeah.
work. So I'm consistently pulled to stories of big, complex, messy families because of it. My family originates outside of Kalamata in a small
Okay.
village of Asilada, and that's my dad's side. And my mom's side, a little harder to track down, but I do know it's like really close to the Albanian border. In fact, a lot of the food that my yaya made from on my mom's side was definitely like Albanian influenced, kind of like so close to the border that it was still sharing some of the similarities of, and some of the Albanian cultures were sort of in that. So I had a little bit of that when I would spend holidays with my mom's mom. And but I've been back to the village, still in touch with my cousin Stavros, who I got to see when I was back in Greece. I got engaged in Greece about a year ago, June, and it was great because my fiance is Jewish and had never seen Greece, so to like take her to the hits. We went back for Christos Vasilopoulos is godfather to his son Apollo. And so we went back, and his village is like, we're probably related. I mean, his village is as the crow flies, like 15 minutes from where my family originates from.
Right.
So we're probably related in some way. And so I went back for the baptism, and then I took Eve to like Amanzoe in Greece, and we went into Athens for a while, and ended up getting engaged in Santorini. But I wanted to see the classics, and then we actually would love to do like a Greek island trip that is away from a lot of the big tourist islands, and get to enjoy. Because actually, I haven't, I'd gone back to Greece, but I spent a lot of time in Athens, and I haven't had a lot of exploration of the country as much as I would like and go. So when we went back, I went back with my dad and my papu, and we went back when I was in my 20s to the village. And it was great because anybody with my last name, Yaitanes, or in Greece, it's Yaitanes, is related to me. Like if you have that name, you are my relative. So, which is great to be that unique. I think that uniqueness is something that I've really appreciated. I don't have a name that is like anybody else. On the flip side, nobody can pronounce it, and it's infinitely teasable last name to have.
Yeah, I've come across the name in different forms in Greece. Like I've had Gaitanidis, Gaitanopoulos, but yours specifically, I haven't come across to be honest. That's the first time.
If you do, find out how they're related to me, but they'll be
probably yeah.
My dad's like in a bit of cognitive decline right now, and so he like can't remember. He used to be able to recount the layers of story of like who had who and how it all kind of came to America, and how we got to my great grandparents that came over, and I grew up in Massachusetts, which is where my family came in, and they were really like kind of entrepreneurs and hard workers, opening like a deli shop and trucks to kind of bring food and donuts and coffee to the workers on the factory lines and that kind of thing. So I come from a family of hard workers and work ethic, so that's
Boston, right?
Just outside Boston. My dad's side grew up in Stoughton, Mass, which most people haven't heard of, but it is the place where the Phillips screwdriver was was
Okay.
invented,
Yeah, right.
and my mom was in Weston, and so I would go between. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, especially on weekends, and so I tell people Boston's the easiest thing because I grew up in Wellesley, which is the first suburb outside Boston. I'm like 10 minutes out of the city. If you land at Logan, it'll take you 15 minutes to get to my house.
Right.
So it's just easier to tell people I'm from Boston.
And
But
there's quite a few Greeks in Boston, from what I understand. But what I find interesting is every time I watch a movie that's made in Boston or about Boston, the accent is so difficult to understand. But I sense no accent in you. How does this work? Is it a specific group of people that live in Boston from certain ancestry?
I mean, look,
I'm
it's
curious.
very, yeah. First of all, like Hollywood, if you've seen a lot of movies, you've seen a lot of bad Boston accents. Like
Right. Okay.
it
Okay.
is like it is a very hard accent to do, and very few that are not from there can do it well. Like I can do it because I've been around it and I've been around a
Right.
lot of people and work, but the town I grew up in really wasn't heavily accented. I think
Mhm.
it's very similar to London in that way. Like depending on what part of the you can tell in 2 seconds of talking to anybody in London, a fellow Londoner knows exactly what part of London they're
Yeah.
from, just the way that
Yeah.
like I can hear a Boston accent and I can pretty much identify where they are possibly or probably from.
Hmm.
And my town didn't really have that. And I left when I was 17 to come to California.
Right.
So I
Okay.
didn't, it slips out every once in a while and there's things there, but it is actually pretty easy to understand because it's actually not that, it's just a more gruffer version of a London accent. It just,
Yeah.
still drops the R's, and it's harsh, but it's in a different way than a New York accent is. And there's something about a Boston accent that I love because it comes with all this color to it and expressions with it. Like
Yeah.
nothing. Like I've only shot in Massachusetts for one job, which was a series I did, Castle Rock, and I like couldn't get enough of the Teamsters. Like I just love listening to them, and I love hearing it because it's something familiar, and it was a lot of people I worked with or for because I did a lot of odd jobs growing up, fish market and landscaping and these kinds of things when I was a teenager into my early 20s before I broke into directing. And I loved like hearing the accent. Like there's something about it. And when I just took my kids back, so I was doing my Boston accent all week for them. So
Proud local. Yeah. I
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah,
I put on The Departed, once upon a time, and within the first few minutes I realized subtitles had to come on. As the movie progressed, I started to really fall in love with the color of the
yeah,
accent because it was interesting. You're right. And interestingly, I started to actually understand what they were saying after a while, which was really cool as
yeah.
well.
It comes with a
Yeah.
great behavior too. There's like a great Casey Affleck sketch on Saturday Night Live that's on YouTube. I was showing the kids, which is the mayor of Dunkin' Donuts sketch, which is like
Right.
I cry laughing when I see it every
Right.
time. But even my kids were just like, it's like I'm not smoking here, Mac. Like he's got a cigarette outside the door. But that's a great sketch if anybody goes and finds the mayor of Dunkin' Donuts sketch on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll check it out.
That is like every guy I worked with or worked for growing up. So
Right. Okay.
it cracks me up. So, but I love it. I think I have a lot of pride coming from Boston. I grew up on great sports with the Larry Bird Celtics and the Fred Lynn Red Sox, and I love being from there. So I get to be Greek and from Boston, and that is something that I carry with me into like every day-to-day part of my life here in California.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. I've never been to the US, and I tell my guests that I've met so many beautiful people of Greek descent, a lot of them from the US, and I tell them one day I'll go to the US, and Boston is definitely a place I'd love to go to. My brother went at some point in the past, and he went to a baseball game there, and it just seems like there's this, I don't know, beautiful culture. The Celtics, obviously, in Boston as well. I'd love to check all that out, being a
Yeah.
basketball fan.
You got to go
One day.
to yeah. If you go in the summer, you go catch a Sox game. I took my
Right.
kids to Fenway. They've been before, but I mean, Boston is a city that whoever designed it was on crack. Like it is the biggest, craziest mess of a city you've ever
All
seen
right.
in terms of trying to move around it. Like New
Right.
York, they figured out like it's a grid, it's easy. You know where you're going. Like
Oh, that's interesting.
I still drive in circles in Boston. Like it is a nav is useless because you're going under the water into the tunnels and I even with my kids, I'm like, we were just, you really have to know it and kind of intuitively know it and commute to it constantly to kind of know the trick to it. But it's a really tricky city to get around, and so
Yeah.
you're better off on foot. Everything's like on top of each other. It's a tiny city.
Oh, is it?
So
Okay, okay, okay.
yeah,
One
and
day
you
I'll check
can,
it out for sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, for sure, go.
Um, I did want to talk to you a little bit about also your career and well, first of all, people find it interesting, I think, to hear about how you got into what you're doing. You're obviously doing very well for yourself. You're award winning. How did you get into this field? Living in Boston, being raised in Boston at the age of 17, I think you said you left. What's the spark there? What's the catalyst for you getting into that world, which now has become, I guess, your career, your profession, right? And you've done so
Yeah,
well in that, it's just, yeah.
thank you. I was very fortunate. I've been very fortunate to like do something I love. Like the thing that I was good at was also something I love doing. And it's, I've had a 30-year career to now, and it is like a marriage. You have to listen to it. It's going to ebb and flow. You're going to sometimes love it. You're going to sometimes um, hate it. My first love was Cindy Villarmos, who I met in Greece at a program for Ionian Village, a Greek camp that I went to when I was 14, and she was a pianist, and she really was the first artist I had met that could explain that ebb and flow about the difficult relationship she had with the piano and how much she loved it and how much she
Mm.
like needed to push it away sometimes and needed to pull it towards her at other times, and that closeness. And I think, I've gone through those moments with my career as well. Not that my career wasn't going well. It was like, what was it that this love that I had, I needed to, like a relationship, you need to keep falling in love with it. And, from those early exciting days when, and I was, when it really clicked was actually, I had gone to visit Cindy's family in Mount Vernon, New York. And her dad had a video camera, and he was videotaping like what we were doing. And it was a few of the other Greeks from that camp experience came together that Christmas and that lived in the area. And we were, shooting on this video camera, on this VHS camcorder. And it blew my mind to see what we had just shot hooked up to the television. And I like ran home from that trip, and I still have all of like Cindy's love letters and everything. It was such a nice, like innocent love that, was like an important person that had come into my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I had come back. I went there an academic thinking I was going to study and become a whatever, and left there wanting to become an artist. And I got, convinced my parents to get a video camera, get a VCR. And then, if you can imagine, I don't know how it works in Australia, but cable TV had to get physically rolled out. It had to like actually get installed in the 80s in your
Mm.
town in order to
Mm-hmm.
get HBO, in order to get the channels and such. So when cable came to my town, it was in other towns. So I started to go to other towns that were next to mine on my bike, and I would volunteer at public access stations. So cable would come to the town, there'd be 100 channels. One channel was reserved for the town to put news or programming centered on the town. And that would be like shooting soccer games or town hall meetings. And it put me behind a camera or inside of a van, pushing buttons. And that was exciting. And then when I was in high school, which was, during that period of time, probably in 86, I think, I had a subscription to Rolling Stone magazine, and they did a story about film school. And then that was the first time the lights went off that I could pursue this as something that was more than that. And I didn't know if I would make it in that. And I ended up minoring. I thought I wanted to be a psychologist, and I ended up minoring in psychology when I was at USC. And I minored in Judaic studies because I was fascinated by the Holocaust and kind of all the psychological aspects that overlapped with my abnormal psych classes, and linguistics. So I had these other interests as kind of backup and I knew that if film didn't work out, I was going to find my purpose through film. And that's what brought me to California. I applied to come to USC Film. I got in. I was the only one in New England that was accepted that year. So it was a big honor for me. And I wanted to make the most of it. My parents, while not artists or creatives, um, you know, didn't, the best thing they did for me was not get in my way. They didn't stop me from doing it and say I had to be a lawyer or a doctor.
Mm.
They didn't understand it. They but they let me pursue it. It was probably the greatest kind of brushstroke of parenting that my parents pulled off, was somehow in the overprotective kind of fear-laden upbringing that I had,
Yeah.
I was allowed to leave Massachusetts, go to California, and pursue the arts.
That's
And
fascinating because I imagine there's a lot of examples like that where people haven't, I guess, made it.
no, but like I had this conversation with my brother this morning, just because I have kids and my son's about to enter high school, and he's at the age that the lights really turned on for me for what I wanted to do, and I'm starting to see that with him as well. And I want to fan the flames without pushing him into something that he doesn't want to be doing. And he's just learning to drive. All these things are starting to happen, and you want to do right by them. It's like, how much do you push, how much do you hold back?
Mm.
For me, when I got to California, like I could not fail. Like I got out of this town where I didn't feel I belonged in a world I mean, the town I came from was so conservative. It was,
Yeah.
it was a dry town. Nothing happened in it. All I had to do, once I could drive, I could go to the town next door and go to the movies and get pizza. But while I was in the town, it was very kind of stifling and confining, because unless you were like an athlete or an academic, there wasn't a lot of space for the arts or what I was interested in. So I just ended up getting, myself into a lot of trouble. So,
Hmm.
um, but when I came to California, I was just like not going back, and I would hammer away. And, when I couldn't make my short film at school, I dropped out, after my third year to make my short film and be able to kind of make my calling card. There wasn't Kickstarter back then or a way to
Mm.
distribute your stuff. So I would write letters, raise money, scrape together the money, burn out whatever I could on my credit cards, and, put together a short film as a way to, that was a way to be my calling card out there. And it was a 10-year process of building my career until I was working all the time. Each, like I would, but it was a great adventure. Like I remember there's not like a day of the last 30 years that is not emblazoned on my mind, and how I
Mm.
got there, and what it meant. And also being, a one-man band, you're protective of making the right choices. Like I've said a million times, like I might have had a grander career. I feel like I took the right amount of risk to the right amount of reward that I was willing to stomach. Like
Hmm.
I would see movies when I was growing up. There was like Down and Out in Beverly Hills, where like the crazy mumbling guy to himself like used to be a big film director, or Irreconcilable Differences, where Ryan O'Neal was like a director that like made a great movie, then made a horrible movie and never worked again. So like movie jail was terrifying. And
Right.
so I
Yeah.
wanted to, it was just me. I had no fallback of any kind. I didn't know anybody. I wasn't connected here. And I had to survive and be able to do that, and also work as a director. So I used to I was literally sorting mail at a law firm downtown when I got both my movie deal at Warner Brothers and my first job being a visual consultant for Diane Keaton, because I didn't,
Mm.
again, but I was getting my VHS tape of my short film into everybody's hands back in the early 90s, to anybody, everybody, whatever I could do. I just would just spend my day like zeroed in on getting my work out there, and was thankful that opportunities followed. But you make of it what you will. You get the door open for yourself, and it's yours to like grab it and seize it and build on it. And that was the edict. So I didn't, TV was like a place I saw real growth. And once I started getting into it, I saw that there was security in its urgency, meaning that I felt that there needed to be something on TV. So there wasn't time to talk about it, think about it, or have it not go forward because it needed to happen. You
Right.
couldn't, like a movie, when I got the movie deal at Warner Brothers at 23 years old, there wasn't any urgency to make the movie, and the movie never happened. I didn't have the tools to, bullshit network, do this, do that, and to maneuver this complex web of a system to get a green light movie. But when I eventually cracked into television, it was like, okay, we need to make 22 of these, and we can't fuck around, and we can't get a day behind, and we have to go. And so there was something about the camaraderie and teamwork of the medium before TV was as good as it became, that I've been able to grow into over the last 30 years. So
yeah, that's interesting, because there's been a shift in the last, I guess, I don't know, 10 years, and you can kind of confirm or deny, I guess, that. But there seems to be a shift from cinema focus to TV focus. And I was wondering why you thought that. I mean, I've heard a whole bunch of different reasons for that from different people. Why do you think there is this? It seems like there's a lot of quality shifting from, I guess, cinema to TV. Am I right in saying it in that way?
I think yes. I think that I think what is happening is what I hoped would happen. There was some, look, TV almost killed movies back in the 50s, right? So like, your 4:3 square television when you were growing up was that way because that's what film looked like. Film used to be, the full 35 millimeter square Academy aspect ratio of your film, similar to IMAX. And to compete with television is when widescreen was invented, all the different cinemaras and panoramas and such, so that you could make these biblical epics and bring people back to the screen to show them something that they couldn't get on television. And I think what is so great now is like movies are doing that again. Like I will go see Top Gun Maverick and Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones and Barbie and Oppenheimer. What made me so excited was the Mansion. One of the best places in the world to see Oppenheimer is down the street from me at the Man Chinese, at the I don't know if it's the Man Chinese Theater anymore, but it's the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, where the Walk of Fame is and the handprints and everything. And that is, was projecting on film, was showing the movie in the exact format with the sound and everything. And it was astonishing. And what was so exciting was I couldn't get tickets, and I had to wait until a Monday morning at 10 a.m. and it was still sold out, which meant that people not only wanted to come to the movie, but wanted to see the movie the best way to see the movie that was possible. And that is exactly where the differentiation is. I think TV coming into your home, there was a period of time where like TV started to look really different. Now there's kind of a new elevated sort of sameness to a lot of the shows and the looks of shows. But when shows really nail it or have a distinct look, I was just talking to one of the directors of Wednesday today, and Alan Miles, who created that, we started out in the 90s together on a low budget movie. And we were talking about how like House of the Dragon has 9 nominations and they have 13, and how far a journey we've come in the last 20 plus years since we worked together. Was really exciting to be able to see that. And I think that TV can do things and tell the ongoing story, much like a novel. Like there's chapters to the novel. It's very similar experience, and you get to be excited to turn that next page and come back to it. Just like a bad book, you're gonna fall off the shows that you don't stay with. So so I think that shift has been growing, and I think each one now is picking their lane more. There's the kind of movie that is really designed to play great on your television set, and then there's the ones that you should go to the theater to see.
Speaking of House of Dragon, and excuse my ignorance, I'm one of these rare people that's never seen Game of Thrones, but I have seen House of the Dragon. I'm a rare breed. I understand. I know.
No, it's actually a great way to watch the show because it's a prequel to the series. You don't need to have seen. In fact, I'm more interested when people see House of the Dragon who haven't seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, you mentioned earlier how you get inspiration from the Greek world and the Greek drama in family life. Is there any of that in the House of the Dragon? Because there's plenty of drama in that show, I've noticed.
Oh yeah, I mean that was like I feel like all I was doing was channeling my family and relationships. Like it's like that. Specifically in House of the Dragon for me, I directed episodes 2 and 3, which is really the crux of the Viserys Rhaenyra relationship, and being a single dad to a daughter. I had a lot of like Viserys and his like maddening like love and push and pull with Rhaenyra is like right out of my daughter Electra is like young Rhaenyra. Like it just feels like those are so in directing that I could pull from my own life into those scenes between them, both the loving scenes and the challenging scenes, and the complexity of trying to make room for a partner in your life that you want. So when I met my fiance, making the two most important women in my life find space and make sure that they have the room that they need for both of those relationships to blossom was challenges and beautiful things that I could find themes in the work that I was doing for the show.
Yeah, I'm a single dad with a daughter as well, so she's 12 at the moment, and watching the show I automatically was drawn in because of that dynamic.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, taking notes, and I was thinking, oh, I'll do that, but not do that. It was interesting. That dynamic is very interesting. And, another movie, for example, like Interstellar with the father-daughter connection there really draws people like myself in. But
100%.
it was an excellent show. You've done very well. And then, again, having told people that I was going to be speaking to you, everyone was getting very excited to, hear about it. And I went through some of your backlog, and I never realized, some of the things that you worked on and directed and produced. For example, Children of June, a book that I really enjoy and I love. And so, it was like an eye opener. You've got a body of work there. Is there anything you look back on and go, that's the thing I'm most proudest of? I mean, it's like picking a favorite child, I understand, but
No, I mean it is, but my son Leo, Leonidas he asked me when we were in Boston, he's like, what are you most proud of? I said Quarry, like without he's like, you didn't even hesitate when you answered
wow.
that. So that series was, I mean, Children of Dune was really exciting. The nerd in me into world build the second and third Dune novels. It just had a 20th anniversary. I did a podcast for it. And it was I've had great experiences, and I've made beautiful episodes within some of the series I've worked on that were like, some of my 5 favorite. I put on my Instagram when the finale of House of the Dragon, which is one of those 5 favorite things that I've made. But Quarry, and it's not only just episodically, but it's an entirety as an experience, creative experience for me, was the most rewarding. It wasn't without its challenges and heartbreak, but the process of making it and the result of what I made was the most me was out there, including a lot of my life of either my marriages or failed marriages or my parents or my grandparents. Like everybody in my life is in that series somewhere. So
Right.
it was definitely the piece that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And little seen, critically acclaimed, but little seen. But I encourage anybody to see it that wants that can check it out. And if you're curious, I can send you some links too.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got this little kind of scenario-based just to keep it light and fun sometimes on the podcast, this little scenario-based game that I play, and I ask my guests. I hope you're happy to do something like that, something different.
Sure.
It's just called the Greek Deserted Island, or we call it Castaway. And
Okay.
basically, I throw you in a scenario where you're on a deserted island, and you have the choice. I don't know how this works, but the gods of this deserted island have decreed that you are allowed to have one Greek food to have with you on this deserted island, and either one Greek, music artist, or some Greek body of work, like a book or a movie or something that you can have with you to keep you, to keep you from going crazy, I guess, or insane. Yeah.
Okay. I would have, I feel like I would have like, I would want, it'd really be a toss up between having pasticcio
That's a classic. Yeah.
as my like, because I feel like I'm on this deserted island. I can eat as much pasticcio as I want, and I'll swim it off, or I'll run around the island so I can enjoy it and indulge in endless casseroles that the pasticcio gods have given me. I probably want Dogtooth, Yorgos's film.
Okay.
Handy. I think that movie is kind of astonishing and reminds me of kind of like everything. I was brought up in like this conservative town of a bubble, and feel like that was like brought all those the kind of walls and the prison to the extreme of your home environment. So I endlessly related to that. But
Mm.
I think those would be, I think a plate of pasticcio and a screening of Dogtooth sound like
Perfect.
on a deserted island sound like a great plan.
Perfect. It's got everything in there. It's got carbs, it's got protein, you've got
Yeah.
your quality cinema. Very nice. Yeah. I I haven't seen Dogtooth, so that's something I have to watch, and I've heard a lot about it. And that's, I guess, the Greek cinema is starting to slowly make some headway, isn't it? Is that
I
accurate in
think,
your
yeah,
opinion?
I
What do
mean,
you think?
I'm involved with the LA Greek Film Festival, so I
Right.
have been for 15 years, and I get to see, and one of the things I love doing is having conversations and Zooms with a lot of the filmmakers and being able to see the projects that they have, and just have a conversation artist to artist with them. And I think like Greek cinema is fantastic. Like the films I have seen as a result of the LA Greek Film Festival are films from Greece that are playing in Los Angeles. And I never get to see quite enough of them because I've always been working when the festival is
Yeah.
happening. It seems to always land in the middle of a job for me. But
Hmm.
um, I'm extremely interested in moving Greek television and elevating Greek television into a place that is closer to other European countries, like what we've seen with Money Heist in Spain, or The Bureau in France, or Fauda in Israel. Like I think these shows, Greece should be making equal, if not better quality programming around that. You've got incredible ability to, very diverse locations. You've got great infrastructure. I just think episodically investing in television that way, like personally excites me.
Hmm.
So I would love to see that, because I think Greek cinema is already achieving a lot of excellence and creativity, and there's so many great voices in that space that has been like, I'm a product of mentorship. So being able to pass information along, or be able to provide advice or teach classes or mentor young filmmakers. I've got a nice group of young filmmakers right now. Has been really rewarding for me and enjoyable, because I'm only here because people gave me their time, gave me opportunity, gave me their focus to listen to me, even when they didn't want to. And I
Mm.
feel that, like, when during times of expansion, I have more of that to give. There's times when I need to be internal and focus on my work, which is why it's taken a little while for us to get this on the schedule, is
No
because,
problem. Yeah.
but, um,
These
when
classes you
you're,
do, is it one-on-one? Do you do any online
no, I
courses or anything like
do,
that?
no, I did a masterclass that's online for LA Greek Film Festival a couple of years ago, but I
Mhm.
usually, like, I go back to USC and usually teach classes,
Right. Hmm.
or sort of one-off lectures and that kind of thing, and
Mm.
mostly I think those things are most interesting in the Q&A sections. I'm most interested in what the students want to know. And I felt in film school, I was so fascinated that, like, wow, not any of my professors are actually out there working. So I feel like
Mm.
I am most relevant and most helpful to the next generation of filmmaker while I am working myself. I think when I stop working is when I'll have, like, a good year before I'm completely out of touch. The business changes so fast and shifts so much that
Mm.
my advice will be antiquated really within a year of me stopping working. So while
Yeah.
I'm in it,
Wow.
I think is the time that it's, I'm the most useful to the next generation, because they're coming into the thing that I'm already in, versus like, hey, I'm like, I haven't, I was really, I think that was the part that really inspired me to leave SC at the time, was like, these professors are not going to teach me or get me to the next level. Like I found a professor to mentor me that I had connected with at the time. And I learned a lot about both the dark side of mentorship as well as the possibilities of mentorship through him. And I really try to channel the best experience for filmmakers. I'm very hands off but encouraging. I
Mm.
feel like ultimately people are grown adults who can maneuver what stories they want to tell. I just am there to either be an audience and help them tell it a little more clearly, but ultimately defer to my students, my mentees, to what the movie they want to tell and the way they want to tell it. Like I don't want them to make something that I'm telling them to make. I want to bring out the thing that they're trying to say.
Yeah, that's interesting. And speaking of LA Greek Film Festival as well, I've been lucky enough to have spoken with some people involved with that. But I also read that you helped produce the Greek American Foundation's Gabby Awards. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm completely ignorant from Australia, to be honest. I'm not sure what that is.
Um, the so I one of the interesting things about being Greek American is I think you fall into, like, in LA, you can fall into like one of three buckets. I feel like there's like the church Greeks, and then there's like the Greek Americans that are not affiliate, that aren't as much religion based, and then there's like the entertainment Greeks. And one of the things that Greg Pappas did with his foundation was really wanting to, much like you're doing, and this was like over 20 years ago, wanting to tell the stories and highlight the great, the accomplishments of Greeks in the business and in all aspects of business, and really bring Greeks together. So,
Mm-hmm.
he had asked me that he had done every couple of years, he did like an award ceremony for people that, were, in different categories and such. And so he asked me when he was doing, that particular award ceremony was going to be done on Ellis Island that year, and so in New York. And so he had wanted me to come and help produce this piece that he had written that had a beautiful actor performing, and it was a great experience. It was great. I think any time I can give back, I give till it hurts, and I give to the extent that I can give of my time and energy, while being protective of what I need to do to keep moving the career down the field, which is like, I'm shooting Presumed Innocent, which is the series I just did for Apple with Jake Gyllenhaal. I know that demands my full attention and my full focus. And so, and then when I am free time I have goes to my kids or goes to my fiance. And then what's ever left over from there, isn't much. So,
Yeah. Sounds like a full schedule for sure.
but this, I think the strike in that regard is, freed me up a little bit to kind of catch up on life that way. And it's, I was on the negotiating committee for the Directors Guild, and I feel like we made a really great deal, especially for the future of the guild. I'm excited to see young directors coming up and taking the deal that happened this year, and 3 years from now making it better, and 3 years after that making it even better. So
I spoke recently with, just speaking about the strike, if we can talk about that. I spoke recently with one of the co-creators of the Blood of Zeus Netflix animated series.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Charles and Vlas Balapanidis.
So
I spoke
great
with Charles,
I mean,
and
the nicest guys ever. I love
beautiful
them.
guys. Had him on the podcast as well. Lovely guys.
So
And
fun.
Charles was mentioning, how with the strike that's on, he kind of I realized it was a big deal, and we've had strikes in the past, and I'm in Australia, trying to be a filmmaker myself, so we are, we say in Australia, America coughs, Australia gets a cold, we're influenced by it, we are affected by it. But he really drove the point home that this is not just about really filmmaking, this strike, because of all this technology that's coming through, and the way cinema is progressing in TV. It sounds like it's a bit of a turning point in terms of how things are negotiated in many different sectors, not just filmmaking, with AI coming on board and things like that. And it's almost like the decision here is going to affect other industries. Do you feel it's like one of those turning points at the moment? Is it that big?
Look, my opinion and perspective on it is, I have been an early adopter of a lot of technologies, and I see that technology, especially in our craft, there is opportunity to wield it in a way that is a tool. I feel like this is, we've seen a lot of tools and advancements in a lot of industries, in a lot of areas, and even within our own industry. And I feel like AI in particular is something, rather than rail against and fight against, I feel like, really outlining and embracing how it will be used, when it will be used, and making sure the artist is in collaboration of that conversation, I think needs to be important. I feel like, unfortunately, what you're seeing isn't the problem of AI. You're seeing a decades old mistrust of the studios.
Right. Okay.
and justifiably so. You know, you're a participant in the success of the show. The studios play with funny accounting. There's minimums that, this various studios will do the minimum being asked for or necessary. I've worked on every scenario. I worked before. I was a director before I was in the union, and was horribly taken advantage of. Like, anything that could be exploited was exploited. And if you don't have your union and the basic agreements outlined, you will get fucked. And those things are important to make sure, because now for me, I'm on the negotiating committee specifically on the creative rights side for the directors, protecting the directors' creative rights, most of which, is the directors don't know their creative rights. They join the guild, but they don't take the time to learn what their creative rights are so they can exercise them. And those things are in there. And I got involved in the guild because I would see people, I'd be like, hey, wait a second, that's not the deal. Like, the deal is I get this, or I come in and get to reshoot that, or I get, whatever it is, this has already been agreed upon by you and the union. And if the union tells you, like, no, we don't have to do it, then we don't have to do it. But as long as I'm here. So I've been from have stood up for my creative rights as a director. And I think here you're seeing the same thing. I think with everything, that I think the technology is too new to define exactly what you're fighting against. I think that it will be there, and I think there'll be a genre of AI cinema that anybody can make. Like, you don't have to be WGA to do. Sorry, I'm getting a call.
That's good.
You don't have to be DGA, WGA, SAG to make a fully AI generated production in the next few years. Like, you could make a whole animated experience or movie and do that. So, but I think within the world, I've experimented with some of the tech, and it is incredible. And I think the actors especially need protections to be able to own their likeness and to not have people take advantage of it. And I think, are we at a turning point? we were at a turning point, in the last strike when they're streaming. That's why there was a strike. I think, I'm also a big believer of staying at the table, and I'm glad that everybody is at the table currently. And I hope that they stay at the table and work this out and get everybody back to work, because, it's the paycheck to paycheck crew members that are being hit the hardest by something like this. And I don't know when this will air and if the strikes will be over, but I think everybody wants to be working and wants to keep the flow. At the same time, I wish that the strikes really rebirthed the indie film industry again. I think the best way to create work on the terms you want it is to get people that are willing to work with you on the terms you want it. So I feel like it would have been nice to see the WGA finding partners out there, financiers out there that are willing to work under the terms that they want. Just like SAG granting these interim waivers has been brilliant, because you're finding people that are willing to work the way you want to work. And then that will become the way that things will be done. And so I am very excited to see the reset to the industry that will happen after these strikes are over. I think by the end of the year, going into early next, that we'll really kind of understand what the next wave of television especially is going to look like.
If you were, a young up and coming 17-year-old somewhere, and you found your passion and you feel, directing and filmmaking is for you, what would you, as Greg, now recommend to someone in that position with all these things in place that are currently occurring, like AI, like the way films are now, the shift towards maybe more TV focused content? What would you recommend to someone in that position to get into the industry and chase their passion and be successful and make a living out of it, I guess?
I would say to them, write their ticket, continue to write and create if they have a voice, control a piece of material that somebody would want to turn into, either a movie or a series. I think that's important. I think in terms of the tech side is to embrace it and learn it, not to treat it like the enemy, to see what it can provide for you as a way to get your story told prior to it, knowing that like once you enter the union, you're going to have more controls and limits and such over things. But if I would imagine in 3 years, somebody at their computer who's sophisticated enough with the various platforms that are out there are going to be able to. You saw when people could start doing visual effects, on their laptops. This is something similar. You're going to see people that are going to make an AI movie that's going to possibly look and feel pretty real, or maybe it won't, or maybe it'll have an aesthetic. You'll just see it as like another genre of kind of a form of animation, or sort
That's
of
interesting.
a hybrid.
Yeah.
I think we're like a ways out, but I also think like to a young actor, like I think what I've seen with deepfake technology and some of the demos like is astonishing. Like I think for an actor, I saw a demonstration of like a de-aging of Cate Blanchett that like played by Cate Blanchett that like blew my mind. Like I was an invisible, you could recast her as a 35-year-old again and in a film. So I think for actors to be scanning and doing and kind of keeping a kind of avatar library of themselves is sort of interesting to me, because you'll need to call upon footage, and who owns the footage that you're sourcing the aging or de-aging from. So I think the more people create virtual assets of themselves, the better. I think, making sure that, your script can't be fed into something that's going to kind of spit out a version of it is there. But if you're, like a one-man band and you want to use that tool at your discretion, use it. Like I think that's there. But I'm fascinated, and it's all moving quickly, but I continue to like keep my hands and feet in the tech that's happening, because it will inevitably produce results. But there is such fear and terror and negativity around the like what these tools can provide, that I get very tired of that conversation, rather than like, well, what is the good that could come out of this, and how do we own the opportunities that these could be presenting, rather than just yelling into the wind about it.
Sure. It's about sitting down at the table and finding an in-between and negotiating, right? That's what it's all about, finding something that benefits everyone, both sides. Yeah, I understand. Well, I know you're
I think
busy,
if I was
Greg.
like,
Sorry.
I think, I mean, just along it, I think if there was trust enough, if there was a safe place enough to like be like, look, these are our fears of what you will do with this, and there was stuff in writing to assuage those fears, then everybody's going to be fine. But everybody always seems to find workarounds to the things that in these situations. And I think that it is now more important than ever that trust be rebuilt, because that's what that is at the crux of both of these strikes, is the years of taking advantage of the artist. It is same old story every time. And there's so many other systems. I'm fortunate to have my Greek passport that I can go work in Europe, where the artist has more ownership of the things that they've done. I think that system would be great to adopt here, but never going to happen. You're going to be fighting for pennies on the dollar, for the rest of our contracts.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, coming out of a situation like this where it's such a big deal and it's such a big event in media, I guess, sometimes after these big events, both sides come out of it with more respect, more understanding of each other, and maybe a stronger unity moving forward. It could be one of those situations, and I'm hoping it is, because, from throughout the world, here in Australia as well, we're big fans of US cinema, Hollywood cinema. I grew up on it, big fan. And, hoping it continues on. And I'm sure it will. It's just a matter of finding that balance. I know you're a busy man, Greg. I don't want to keep you too long, but I just had a little thing I also do on my podcast. It's called The Hot Seat. Just ask a couple of questions. Keep it light again. Bit of fun. And if there's any questions in there you don't want to answer, you don't have to.
Let's do it.
All right. So your first memory.
My first memory is of my brother when I was growing up I grew up in town of Waltham, Mass until I was 5. So I have really early memory of him as a baby. And that's like one of my earliest memories of like seeing him in the kitchen.
Your favorite subject at school?
Psychology.
Greek sweet question time. Galaktoboureko or baklava?
Baklava.
baklava. What are you afraid of?
With like a hot tea.
Oh, okay, good one. Yeah. What are you afraid of?
Anything happening to my kids.
Hmm. I can understand that. Your biggest strength?
Fairness.
What superpower do you wish you had?
Fly.
Like, fly straight to Greece for summer, fly straight. Um, First thing you notice on a woman. And I know you've got a
You know,
fiance, so we
the
got to be
thing that
careful.
I that I,
Yeah.
that actually like is all the time about my fiance is her smile.
Okay.
That is
That's
the thing
beautiful.
that takes me away and has been has is a thought and an image that always comes to mind when I think about her.
Advice to 10-year-old Greg.
You are loved.
That's beautiful. One country you would like to visit other than the USA and Greece
That I haven't been to yet.
that you haven't been to yet, or live in, let's say, a country you'd like to live in,
I'd like to live in. I would,
hypothetically, in another life or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I would love to be somewhere in Europe, central enough to be able to jaunt to. Like when I was working in London, it was so amazing to be able to hop on a plane and be anywhere in Europe
Yeah.
unjet
Yeah.
lagged. And so I think that would be, you know, I mean, I've worked and lived in a lot of places in Europe. So in there, in terms of like a place I haven't been to that I would love to visit, would be probably Japan.
Mm. Okay. I've been there, so I highly recommend it. It's an amazing place.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you look for in a friend?
You know, I don't have a very large friend circle, and I say that, you know, being able to meet me where I'm at is
Mm.
important aspect. You know, I'm fortunate that like my group of friends always just kind of accept me, the that I'm doing the best I can, and I have other friends that have superpowers of maintaining friendships and cultivating things, and they also know like where my own strengths and limitations are. So I feel like being accepted is
Mm.
um, you know, in that way builds trust and vulnerability.
Hmm. We spoke about your proudest filmmaking achievement. What are you proudest of in general in life?
You know, you know, I mean, you know, like parenting, as you know, is like incredibly humbling, and
Yeah.
it like kicks my ass every day. So, you know, waking up in the morning and being able to look at that, and when I have those wins as a family, you know, we just went on a family trip with me and my kids, and I was like, we got together afterwards. I'm like, everybody was great. Like we traveled well, like we did it, like we won that trip really well. So like when you
Mm.
get those wins inside the family where everybody like worked together, didn't fight too much, and like we got on a plane all together and got through it and did everything we were supposed to do and got back to when we were supposed to get back. Like when you get those wins, especially as a single dad, like doing it on your own, I find that like those are the times that are, you know, I love, like I feel the most alive in my life when I'm doing those kind of family things.
Agreed. One person, dead or alive, you'd love to have a dinner with, have a conversation with.
Dead or alive that I would love to have a conversation with. Um, you know, it would probably be dead, and like I would love to have you know, a deep dive with Bob Fosse on his work at some point. You know, I feel like that would be, you know, he was hugely influential on me, and just, you know, the transition of being so good at multiple platforms like that would be something fascinating to me.
I'm ignorant. I apologize. Who's Bob Fosse? I'm
Bob
sorry.
Fosse directed All That Jazz, which is one of my favorite films.
Oh,
He
right.
directed Star 80 and Lenny and Sweet Charity, and he is really, you can see his influence on so many filmmakers. You know,
Right.
it's really like incredible work. So one of your homework assignments after this is to go watch all that, is to
Will
watch
do.
all that
All
jazz,
that jazz, all that
which is
jazz.
based on his own life. So it's like
Ah,
an autobiographical kind of, you know. And if you think about him, he's the only director to win the Emmy, the Oscar, and he like won he won a Tony for directing on stage for Pippin, no, for Pippin, I think, and then he won the Oscar for Cabaret for directing, and the Emmy for Liza with a Z, which was a thing he did for television, all in the same year. So he's like the only person who's won all of that. But he's really a incredibly gifted director and artist, and was a dancer and a choreographer turned director. So just like the raw talent of that, it's is fascinated me as a filmmaker. I'm sure there's larger and more intellectual and kind of more interesting stuff, but I'm fortunate that my fiance, I get to have dinner with as much as we possibly can. So and she is infinitely fascinating to me. So
That's
I
awesome.
get the pleasure of those conversations nearly every night.
Beautiful, beautiful. Final question.
Yeah.
What does being Greek mean to you?
For me, it was a sense of identity. It gave me a history and a culture to like look back on and a place to come from. And I think, being connected to my heritage is something that was like grounding and beautiful and a huge part of my journey as to becoming the man I am.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate your time, Greg.
Liz, thank you so much. It's so great.
If there's anything
One of
else
my
you want to
favorite
say
interviews.
Thank you so much. Very humbling.
No, I've said I've talked a lot, but it's been a pleasure, and I really I'm glad that we did this, and I appreciate that you reached out, and I'm glad we set time. It was really like a lovely conversation. If you come through LA, be sure to look me back up, and let's reconnect sometime.
Oh, that'd be lovely. Thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Wish you all the best. Everyone listening in, thank you for listening once again and joining us. And please check out Greg's work. Obviously, he's done so well for himself, and we really appreciate all the work he's done. Another great Greek here. And we'll see you again next week. Thank you, Greg, so much. Enjoy your day, my friend.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.